Shalom, I'm Josh Feigelson, a 2005 Musmach of YCT. I live in Skokie, Illinois, here with my wife and my 3 sons, and I currently work as Executive Director of the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. I'm going to start with a question. When you think about a rabbi who inspires you, who comes to mind? What makes them that source of inspiration? Really, take a minute and think. When I think about this question, I come up with rabbis who combine compassion with learning. I think of rabbis who are driven to care for the most vulnerable, who reach out to the people on the margins who might otherwise be forgotten. I think about rabbis who reach out to Klal Yisrael with the faith that Torah belongs to all of us, and with the humility that we can all learn from one another. I think of rabbis who make tefillah not just something to get through, but something through which we come alive together. 20 years ago, in the basement of Ramat Ora Synagogue on 110th Street in Manhattan, I first entered YCT. I was attracted to Chovevei because it wanted to produce rabbis like this. And in the 2 decades since, it has. I and my fellow Musmachim are serving and leading congregations, teaching in Hillels and schools and camps, pioneering the world of Jewish chaplaincy, and so much more. As the leader of a national organization myself, I regularly hear from people all over the country, from philanthropists to leaders of other denominations, to presidents of federations, and even just regular folks, about how inspired they are by Chovevei rabbis. What inspires them, what may well inspire you, is that we aim to combine chesed with gvura, compassion with discipline. It's that we know our stuff, and that, like Hillel HaZaken, we see Torah as something to share, not just something to protect. It's that our first instinct is to ask, how can I honor the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, in the person in front of me, no matter where that person comes from? That ethos is a credit, I think, to the yeshiva's founders and faculty, and it is carried forward today in the leadership of Moriva Rabbi Dov Linzer, president and Rosh HaYeshiva, who has been at the core of the yeshiva's Torah for its entire life. Rabbi Linzer's vision for the future of the yeshiva, of serving Klal Yisrael and bringing YCT's unique character to communities and organizations who will benefit from it, excites and inspires me. And I really can't wait to see what the next 20 years will bring. Thank you for being here tonight, for your support of Chovevei, and for being a partner to us in our holy avodah. I'm delighted to introduce tonight's main event. Gary Rosenblatt, now editor-at-large for the Jewish Week, is a wonderful friend of the yeshiva and an icon in American Jewish life. He will interview Rabbi Ben Berger, Vice President for Jewish Education at Hillel International. I'm honored to say that Ben and I overlapped as students at Chovevei years ago and worked for many years as colleagues at Big Ten Hillels, me at Northwestern, hence my purple sweater, and Ben at The Ohio State University. Ben went on to lead the Wexner Heritage Program at the Wexner Foundation, and when I saw the announcement about his appointment to his current position, I was overjoyed. He is everything a YCT rabbi should be: thoughtful, compassionate, collaborative, entrepreneurial. He is already doing amazing work on behalf of hundreds of thousands of Jewish college students across the country, and I am eager to hear his reflections tonight. Gary and Ben.
Ben, hi.
Hi, Gary. Nice to see you.
It's great to be with you for this program and have a chance for us to schmooze. It's kind of a unique program in many ways, and I'm honored to be taking part in it with you.
Thank you. A unique program for a unique time, Gary.
Absolutely. So I thought maybe we'd start with, if you could just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and kind of what motivated you to take the path that led you to YCT.
Sure. So I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up actually in a Reform home where Judaism was an important part of my life, but it was a typically Reform home. Sunday school, Hebrew school a couple times a week, and bar mitzvah and confirmation, and that was sort of it until I got to college. When at UC Santa Cruz, when I found through a variety of experiences and mentors, found a interest in Judaism, and it started reading sort of ravenously, and from there, with a year in Israel my junior year, grew into an observant Jew and spent the next number of years in different learning environments, and with gathering rabbis around me, whoever would teach me, whoever I could learn with, and reading a lot, and reading rabbis like Yitz Greenberg and the Rav Soloveitchik, who became really my leading lights in bringing me to modern Orthodoxy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, and you partially answered, some role models or heroes that you had along the way, either personally or through their writings.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I had many teachers along the way who were an important part of my journey, I would say. I had a Chabad rabbi while I was in college who was a very important part of helping me realize the beauty of observant Jewish life. I also had a another rabbi who I became very close with in college, who was, he was not yet a rabbi, but he was on his way. He had a very eclectic background, had spent time in the Chabad world and the conservative world, and he was on his way then to becoming a renewal rabbi. And it was clear to me from the two of them that neither path was my own, but I found my way in between. And in part, it was by through reading and being inspired. Really, Yitz Greenberg was one of the early voices in my ear, right, or words on page that really drew me toward a sort of a middle path between those two rabbis. And I would say, actually, and it's important for this story because it's so much of why I ended up at YCT. When I first encountered Rabbi Avi Weiss in the year after college, and I don't remember exactly how I learned about him, but I was working at Cornell University Hillel, and I got drawn to him somehow, his activism, maybe even one of his students who was visiting Cornell. And I became immediately enamored with him. And, you know, even from a distance, then he became my Rebbe. Now, the funny story is how I actually met him the first time, which was when I was working at University of Michigan Hillel a couple of years later. And he showed up at Michigan to protest the Palestinian Solidarity Movement, the pre-BDS movement. And I actually was working for the Hillel, and we had a very different approach to how to respond to this Palestinian Solidarity movement. And I deeply disagreed with his approach. And I went to tell him and to give him a piece of my mind. And we ended up speaking on a Friday night. He was at the Chabad house. And we ended up, it was fall break, so there weren't many students around. And we went to, I went to see him, and we ended up having a couple of hour conversation, at the end of which he, in his characteristic way, says to me, "Ben, have you thought about becoming a rabbi?" And honestly, that was it. A week later, I was visiting the yeshiva in New York, and I thought to myself, I need to be here. This is where I need to be. And I had just gotten married, and 6 months later, I was enrolled in the yeshiva, leading a very different path, down a very different path than I expected, certainly, and even more so than Rachel, my wife, did.
Did Rabbi Weiss change your mind about the activism part?
That's a good question. Look, I in many ways emulate Rav Avi and deeply admire him and his ways. I never became the activist that many of his Talmidim have become, but I think that his approach to activism is deeply important, that it exists, and it's admirable in unbelievable ways. And I learned a lot. I've learned a lot from it, for sure.
So I'm finding out that you and I have some things in common, in that when I was a freshman at YU, the first course I took was with Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, and it was one of the peak experiences of the 4 years. And
Wow.
we stayed in touch. And I'm fortunate, my wife Judy and I, the last almost 4 years, to be members of HIR and the influence of Rabbi Weiss. So we got some connections there.
Absolutely.
So you've had this great career. I know it included being at Hillel and Ohio State, and your years at Wexner, and now back at Hillel in a very key position. And when we talked the other day, you talked a little bit about your mission and these pieces that have helped you on your path, or your trajectory to this mission. If you could talk a little bit about how you see that mission.
Yeah, it's funny. We spoke the other day, and I'm, trying to remember what I said then. It must have been good enough to stand out.
Today, right?
Right, exactly. All time is blending together. But yeah, my mission, I think, really since the moment that I found my way into Jewish life that was filled with learning, with song, with vibrancy that really appealed to my heart, has been to bring that to other people, either through my own teaching and my own leadership within communities when I've been on campus, or I would say in my work at Wexner and Hillel International, which has been about training other people, whether lay leaders or professional leaders on campus, to be able to do that, to help support them in having the skills, the ideas, the knowledge, the depth and gravitas in order to do their work in profound and powerful ways, so that the people whom they're reaching, wherever it be, the students on campus, their community members, understand that Jewish life has an incredible amount to offer them, and more importantly, the world. And I think that that's, when it comes down to it, my core mission.
So there's a lot of discussion, I guess, in every generation, but certainly now about, how is this cohort of college students different than all previous cohorts? And I think there's some very, very real differences.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you tell us about that.
Yeah, I do think that there are some absolute similarities across generations. Going back, I have a favorite text that I teach from Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, which depicts Rabbi Eliezer as a young man seeking a life of meaning, a life where he can find that which draws him to most be himself. And for him, it was Torah. And I think that point is eternal, right? I think still we very much see that in students today, that they ultimately are seeking a life of meaning, of purpose, of self, right? That which is most themselves. But there are differences in each generation for sure. And even in the 20 years that I've been working on campus, on and off campus, I've seen tremendous change. And some of it for the good, and some of it that is quite worrisome, I'll be honest. I look at college students today, and there's a lot written about this, a lot said about this, and maybe some of it's sort of oversaid and over exaggerated, but I think that there's a fundamental truth in the points about college student generation, those who are born after 2000, right? If you think about freshmen today, those who are in their first year of college or born, let's say 2003, 2004, after 9/11, in a very different world than you and I certainly grew up in. They were born with iPhones in their hands and devices constantly tethered to devices and to social media, and with parents that I think in the most loving ways, but often in ways that I think hamper their children's ability to be resilient and to live in a way that is independent. And so what we see as a result on campus is increased mental health concerns. Levels of anxiety, stress, depression, and suicidality are staggering, terrifying, honestly. And any parent should be concerned about what's going on right now, and figure out ways to support their children to grow up to be both independent and capable of living independently and living through difficult times, right? Building themselves up as resilient.
So much of the Jewish community is very much focused on, when thinking about the college campus, it's about Israel, BDS, the campus is on fire, etc.
Yeah.
From your perspective, and particularly in what you're saying now about the seriousness of issues of depression, you in a sense and your team are kind of the front lines of the Jewish community in dealing with the students. How does that all come together?
Yeah, I often get asked, sometimes in shul on Shabbat morning or at events or, wherever I am, when people find out that I work for Hillel, about the campus and, the fire on campus and BDS and how bad it is. And the truth is, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It can be really bad. And there are some campuses where it's really terrible and really just a burden upon our Hillel professionals who got in this business not to be firefighters, but to inspire students and to help them, lead them toward living deeply connected Jewish lives. And even more so to those students who, as I said, are already, somewhat fragile, honestly. and on campus to learn and to grow, and not to get caught up in sort of the political battleground of our time. But when people say to me the campus is on fire, I feel very strongly to resist that when they're talking about it being about Israel. I think that if the campus is on fire, it's because of this acute mental health crisis that I just spoke about. Students that are facing unprecedented mental health challenges and the repercussions from that, which affect their entire lives and their ability to be students. And that's why I feel even more strongly about the role that Jewish life has on campus. Honestly, I think that what we have to offer as a people is a container for living a life of meaning and purpose in what can be a very hard, chaotic, harsh world. And especially when there's instability, it behooves us even more to bring a seriousness, a depth of content and connection to these students who I see benefit greatly from Jewish life and being part of Jewish life and Jewish community.
So in the few minutes we've talked already, this is probably the longest conversation I've had in the last 7 or 8 weeks that hasn't talked about the coronavirus yet.
Yeah.
And particularly in what you're saying about how fragile college students are before all of this, when I think we're all still kind of reeling from it and trying to navigate where we come out.
Yeah.
How will this impact, going forward? And we live in the world of Zoom. It gives new meaning to Zoom golly golly. But where do you see, as you're planning for, I guess, for next fall?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, I do think it's important to recognize the tremendous opportunities that have come as a result of this sort of terrible, in many ways, moment. I'll say just personally, both my wife and I have been busy raising 4 wonderful daughters who are watching tonight, and building careers, right, that have been often all-consuming, right? And I've traveled a lot for work, and that's had its sort of exhausting effects on family life. And just over the last couple of months, I think we've been able to be closer than we ever have, and had more time and more fun. And so I'm going to look back at this period and actually be quite grateful for the time that I've had with my family, and grateful that we've had the luxury, right? We've been healthy, thank God. And I recognize that's not true for everyone, and that I know that this has just been an incredibly hard period for so many. The other way I think that we're very lucky is there's been a tremendous proliferation of incredible content, some of it overwhelming, way too much, but also really good. I've been proud at Hillel to be part of that. From day one that we realized what was going on, we immediately created this content platform called Hillel at Home. And we've provided hundreds of hours, maybe even in the thousands now, for thousands of students and non-students, of incredible speakers and learning of all sorts, and mental health support, and cooking demonstrations and yoga, and the list goes on. So there is just so much, and people are able to access in ways that they haven't necessarily before, or necessarily had the time before. So those are some bright spots amidst what's really a challenging time. I also think a lot about my children and how they're going to come out of this, and not only my children, but their generation. And in comparison to the college student generation that we spoke about before, and the concerns we have about them, and the fragility, and the concerns about coddling. And I do wonder, and I should leave this to people who know much more about these things, but I do wonder if the story that comes out of this for my children's generation is that they went through a hard period, something they never would have anticipated, we never would have anticipated. But by and large, they survived, and they actually did pretty well. Not to say that there aren't, many hard stories and hard moments in this. It sure is hard. but they're going to come out of this, and I hope that we'll look back at this period in, whether it's a few years, a decade, hopefully when they're on college campuses, and they'll be stronger as a result. They'll be more resilient. They'll understand that they can go through hard times and be okay, that this will actually fortify them. I think that could be one of the great stories to come out of this. I don't know, but I hope that I'm right.
I think we all hope so too. When we talked the other day, you spoke about how Chovevei help prepare you for the kind of work you do in engaging students, and in some ways kind of a unique quality. And I think people would like to hear about that.
Yeah, not only did Chovevei prepare me to do this work, but I think that there's sort of an incredible confluence of events that have allowed me and many other Chovevei Musmachim to thrive in the Hillel world, which I think is a story worth telling for a moment. When I started in Chovevei in 2004, Hillel was going through an interesting time of transformation, and I would say when I came out in 2009, it was at a very important moment where there was a group of young educators, Jewish educators, who realized like we really need to work hard to bring an educationally focused approach to Hillel. Not that Hillel hadn't had an educational heart at it, but the realization that we had to be engaging and build networks around connecting to students however we could, right? Jews making Jews. I'm blanking on the saying, but what it I think ultimately what that did was put the onus back on sort of a new generation of Hillel professionals to build up a content base again. And it came with an incredible infusion of dollars from the Jim Joseph Foundation that recognized the need to put educators on campus. And so as I was coming out and in the years around me, there were a number of us, many of us, who ended up on campus. And I think really forged a new path on campus, really focused on Jewish education. Now, there were obviously non-Chovevei Musmachim and Musmachot out there who were doing this work, but we were really, I think, at the center of it. I mean, we just were introduced by Josh Feigelson, who was really at the heart of that. And he was, I'll just say, I think it feels good to me to be, in the same room as him today, because he was really an important part of the inspiration for me in doing the work. And I learned so much from him in the early days, and I still look to him as one of those inspirations. And he is not alone. And since that, there were a number of us in those early days that were part of the senior Jewish educator cohort. And I would say even since then, today, if you look at some of our most successful educators in Hillel, they're Chovevei Musmachim. So why? What is Chovevei? This is your question. What is it about Chovevei that's been so good for Hillel? So timing is one for sure, but I think there's something deeper than that as well. And I think it goes to what the mission of Chovevei is. We at YCT believe deeply in engaging the Jewish world from a place of depth, content, and real commitment to openness. And that's what Hillel is. Hillel is a pluralistic organization that believes in connecting its students to each other and to sources of meaning in Jewish life. And I think we come out really well prepared to do that. Not that we don't have a lot of learning to do when we get to campus, we certainly do. And in fact, a large part of my work now and my team's work is about training rabbis to be able to do the work on campus with training that they don't necessarily get while they're students, but you learn on the job. And our students, our Chovevei Musmachim, come out though with, first of all, a sense of mission, a sense of entrepreneurship, the fact that we've sometimes been blocked from sort of mainstream rabbinic jobs, I think has been to our great benefit in organizational life, and Hillel in particular. It's pushed us to be creative, to want it, and I think that the result has been just this really, looking just over these 20 years or so, 15 years at the the number of really successful YCT alumni who have been on campus and the ways that we've changed the movement. It's pretty incredible to see, actually.
Pretty incredible. And I really enjoy the opportunity to spend time with you, and wish you a mazel tov when you're being honored, and for spending time with me and for everyone watching and listening. And thanks again.
Thank you, Gary. If I could just say quickly, it really is just a tremendous honor to be included in this event, and as seen by my alma mater, my yeshiva, as someone who's contributing to the Jewish world. And I'm just grateful to the leadership of the yeshiva, whom I really love and feel so connected to, for seeing, my contributions to the Jewish world as being worthy of honor. And it's worth saying that I have a family who has supported me tremendously along the way, both my immediate family and my extended family. And I'm grateful to all of them for allowing me to get to this moment. So thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Gary, Ben, thank you so much for those brilliant insights. Thank you, thank you. In solidarity with Am Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael and Tzva Haganah Yisrael, and with expressions of nichumim to the family of Amit Ben Yigal, who fell last week, and in prayer for shalom and healing for Kol Yoshvei Tevel, B'shut Yididi, Hanasi v'Harosh Yeshiva, Rav Dov. What an extraordinary evening it is tonight as we celebrate the 20th anniversary of Yeshivat Chovevei Torah. And tonight, it's Ben's night. It's an evening of great nachat for Rachel, for the children, for your respective parents, for the family. And Ben, with deep respect and great love, I've penned this personal and open letter to you, which comes from a very, very deep place, which I'll read in part. Dear Ben, it's hard to believe that it's almost 2 decades since we first met at the University of Michigan, where you worked as the Hillel program director. It was one of the first BDS weekends, and I had come with a small group to raise a voice of protests. I felt an immediate connection and kinship with you. There was something about the way you expressed your concern for Am Yisrael. There was something about the way you balanced that concern with a commitment for Kol Yoshvei Tevel. There was something about the way you listened to others. There was something about your she'ifah to lead and make a difference that made me immediately recognize that you could become a great, great Rav B'Yisrael extraordinaire. And so you came to Chovevei, moving to Riverdale with Rachel. During those years, I often leaned on you for advice. You were mature beyond your years. Navigating those early Chovevei times was not simple, but your insights and suggestions were always spot on. From YCT, you went on to Ohio State, and then as a very young man, one of the highest positions at the Wexner Foundation, and today working on the highest of levels at National Hillel. Ben, you've already accomplished so much, bringing so much credit to Chovevei, Am Yisrael, and beyond, leading with great strength, great dynamism, but with a rare humility. And you've had all of this professional success while being a paragon of a family person. Somehow you were able to create boundaries, finding room to be there for your wonderful Rachel and the family. All this serves as a model for others to emulate. Ben, I thank you for believing in Chovevei. Ben, I thank you for taking Chovevei to new, higher and higher levels, I thank you for your personal support. I thank you for your friendship. I bless you and Rachel and the family with continued health, life, and fulfillment. Milev elev, may our friendship and love for each other grow. Mala mala, bivracha, hokara, ahava, ahava rabba rabba. How I respect you and love you. Mazal tov, Ben.
20 years ago, we started with a vision. It was a vision of a different type of rabbi, a rabbi who is open, present, listening and caring, a rabbi who engages and empowers, a rabbi who is a leader and a change agent, a rabbi who uplifts and inspires. It was a vision of a different type of orthodoxy, an orthodoxy that builds bridges, not walls, an orthodoxy that cares about all of Klal Yisrael and about Kol Yoshvei Tevel, an orthodoxy that is a source of optimism, inspiration, and joy. It was a vision of a Torah that is sensitive, moral, and nuanced, a Torah that touches hearts and engages minds, a Torah that speaks to today's most urgent issues and today's Jews, a Torah that says that everyone has a place, that all voices are welcome. Now, 20 years later, we can look back with pride and see that we have succeeded beyond what we could have imagined. We have 135 rabbis in the field, in the US and worldwide, serving in pulpit, education, college campuses, chaplaincy, and beyond, educating, inspiring, supporting, and energizing their students and their congregants. Our rabbis who fuse a deep knowledge of Torah with an approach that is deeply anchored in Torah, non-judgmental and empowering. So much so that we have been told by Hillel International year after year that our rabbis are so outstanding that they would hire any rabbi that we produce sight unseen. Rabbis who at a time of crisis have risen to the challenge, providing pastoral care to those hospitalized with coronavirus, employing immigrants to make masks for disadvantaged communities, partnering with kosher restaurants to provide food for healthcare workers, and working tirelessly to spread Torah, strengthen community ties, and make sure that every person is supported and cared for. It is a source of great pride and great accomplishment when one thinks not only of these rabbis, but of the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives that they have touched and transformed for the better. Each day, these rabbis are the standard bearers of an orthodoxy that is welcoming and inclusive, and they teach and disseminate a Torah that is relevant, compassionate, and compelling. Yes, we have accomplished so much in our first 20 years. Now we must ask, what will be our impact for the next 20 years? Chazal tell us, Ben Esrim Lir Dov, at the age of 20, it is time to pursue. Time when we, having reached this age of maturity, to strive, to reach, to become a fully realized YCT, extending our reach, deepening our impact, discovering new ways to lead and transform the Jewish community. Our core is a 4-year smicha program, but word has gotten out, and people are asking for more. Just last year, a group of Israeli rabbis came to us asking for us to find a way to bring our training to them. So this year, to meet this need, we launched our Israel program, taking a cohort of accomplished Israeli rabbis in their 30s and training them with the pastoral sensitivity, Torah leadership, and religious worldview that is unique to YCT. In the near future, we plan to launch our Orthodox Rabbis Serving Klal Yisrael program with a focus on engagement, outreach, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And I have no doubt that the rabbis emerging from this program will be prepared to take on the new communal and religious realities that we will be facing in a post-COVID world, confronting these new challenges head on and forging a path for all of us heading forward. We will continue to be a Torah and thought leader for our community through the Lindenbaum Center for Halachic Studies, through our Shiurim Teshuvot, articles, and podcasts. But the future holds more. It is my plan to open in the not-so-distant future a YCT kollel, a kollel that will provide prestigious fellowships for advanced Torah scholars to engage in the most pressing halachic and communal issues of the day. Issues such as fertility, medical ethics, gender and sexuality, disabilities, and technology and community. Finally, I turn to our greatest asset, our pride and joy, our alumni, our rabbis in congregations, in nursing homes, in schools, on college campuses, those engaging young professionals, and those in leadership positions in major Jewish institutions. We have grown to a great number, and we are truly a force to be reckoned with. To you I say that in the coming years, we intend to increase our investment in you as individuals, in your Torah and in your professional skills, and in you as a community, strengthening ties with one another so that your reach will be extended and your impact will be multiplied. Thank you all, our guests and our supporters, for believing in us and sharing in our vision. Together we have achieved so much in these first 20 years, and together we will continue to achieve le'ela u'le'ela, higher and even higher, in the next 20 transformative years to come. Shenatzlichu b'chol ma'aseh yadeinu, v'timamesh et kol chalamoseinu. Bless us, God, that we will find success in all of our endeavors and that we will realize all of our dreams. Thank you and good evening.